Imagine this. There was a time when they swore you were the best thing that ever happened to them. They said you were different, special, that no one had ever understood them the way you did, that finally they had found home. And you believed. You built something real. At least it felt real. Late night talks about the future, inside jokes that belonged to no one else, silent glances that spoke louder than words. You had dreams together, plans that made life feel bigger, brighter, full of promise. But then something changed. At first, it was subtle. The messages became shorter, the laughter less frequent. The warmth in their voice turned into something distant, something hollow. You felt it before you understood it, like a storm forming on the horizon, long before the first raindrop falls. Then one day, it happens. Maybe it's a conversation, carefully rehearsed, where they look at you like a stranger and say, "I just don't feel the same anymore." Maybe it's a slow fade, days of silence stretching into weeks until you realize they were leaving you long before they actually left. Maybe it's betrayal, a truth you never saw coming, cutting through everything you thought was real, and you sit there, stunned, replaying every moment in your mind. Where did it go wrong? What changed? Were they lying all along? But the real pain comes later, not when they leave, not even when they move on. It's when you hear the way they speak, about you to others. The same person who once told you that you were their world now calls you clingy, dramatic, too much. The same person who said they had never loved anyone like you now acts as if you were just a mistake they had to outgrow. The same person who whispered forever into your ear now speaks about you like you were a burden they carried for too long, and you wonder, was any of it real? Because how does someone go from saying you were their greatest love to making you sound like a regret? How do they rewrite history so easily, turning love into inconvenience, devotion into desperation, and you into just another lesson they had to learn? But maybe the real question isn't how they could do this. Maybe the real question is, why do we keep believing in love, knowing it can end like this? Why do we invest our hearts, our time, our souls into something that can be rewritten overnight? Why do we trust the words of people who can wake up one day and decide that they no longer mean what they once said? Why do we cling to promises that were never binding in the first place? And yet, even after all of this, you'll hear someone else say those same words to you one day. "I've never felt this way before. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I'll never leave you." And a part of you will want to believe them. But should you? Or is love, real love, something entirely different from what we've been taught to expect? To answer that, we have to go deeper. Because this pain, this cycle, it's not random. It has a cause, a pattern, a hidden force beneath it. A force that has shaped human relationships for centuries. A force that most people never see until it's too late. We grow up believing in forever. It's in the stories we hear, the movies we watch, the way love is sold to us as something sacred, unbreakable. We are taught that if love is real, it should last. That when someone says, "You're my everything," they mean it in a way that will never change. But love, in its rawest form, has never been about permanence. Nietzsche once said, "It is not the lack of love, but the lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages." What he meant was that most people don't truly fall in love with a person. They fall in love with an idea of what that person means to them, an idea of what the relationship should be, an idea of who they are when they are with them. But ideas are fragile. They shift, they decay, they evolve, and when they do, the foundation cracks. Carl Jung would argue that the person we fall in love with is rarely the person we actually see. It's the projection of something deep within us, a longing, an unmet need, an unresolved wound that whispers, "This is what I have been searching for." And so, we don't love them. We love what they awaken in us. We love the reflection of our own desires, mirrored back at us in their presence. But here's the problem. People aren't static. They change. They reveal truths we didn't see at first. And when reality doesn't match the illusion, disappointment sets in. This is where the psychological betrayal begins. Not when they leave, but when we realize they were never who we imagined them to be. This is why, when love ends, it often feels like a lie. Not because they deceived us, but because our own mind did. And yet, there is something even deeper at play. The spiritual blindness of love in its highest form is not about possession. It is not about needing someone to fill an emptiness inside of us. But that's exactly how most people love. We seek relationships to escape ourselves, to silence the loneliness, to mask the unresolved wounds, to give our lives meaning through the presence of another. Aldous Huxley warned that love, when driven by attachment, is nothing more than addiction. The highs of validation, the dopamine rush of being wanted, the illusion of completeness, it all feeds into the same cycle that keeps people trapped in toxic patterns. This is why love turns to resentment. This is why the same person who once made you feel whole can now make you feel worthless. This is why they can rewrite history, because they were never in love with you. They were in love with how you made them feel. And when you no longer serve that purpose, the illusion shattered. But the real tragedy isn't that they left. It's that you still believe you lost something. Because if love is only real when it's reciprocated, if your worth is tied to someone else's ability to stay, then what does that say about you? It means you never truly had love to begin with. You only had an agreement, one that was always conditional, always temporary. And until we understand this, we will keep repeating the same cycle, falling for an illusion, being devastated when it fades, building ourselves back up, only to fall again. But is there a way out? Is there a way to love without losing ourselves in it? To break free from the cycle and see love, real love, for what it truly is? The answer is yes, but it requires something most people aren't willing to do. It requires rebellion. You think the pain is yours alone, a private wound, a solitary grief. But look closer. Every time you stay in a relationship, long after respect has eroded, justifying their indifference with, maybe if I love harder, you are replaying a script written by cognitive dissonance. Your brain, desperate to align action with belief, whispers, they'll change, even as your body screams, run. Every time you stalk their social media, dissecting posts for hidden meanings, you're feeding the sunk cost fallacy, a neural hijacking that conflates investment with value. I've given so much, you plead to the void, as if love were a ledger and suffering earned interest. But the consequences run deeper than your heartbeat. Societally, we've built cathedrals to the myth of the one. Romantic comedies, pop songs, wedding industry propaganda all sell the same lie, that love is a destination, not a journey, a prize to win, not a practice to nurture. This cultural conditioning rewires our nervous systems. Studies show that dopamine spikes when we receive a text from a crush mirror, those of gambling addicts hitting jackpot, a biochemical trap that mistakes obsession for connection. We're not loving, we're feeding. And what of the spiritual cost? When you tie your worth to another's attention, you amputate your soul. You become a beggar at the banquet of your own life, waiting for scraps of validation to feel whole. This is the tragedy Viktor Frankl warned of. Man's search for meaning reduced to man's search for someone. The more we outsource our divinity to others, the more we hollow out, until even our prayers become transactional. Make them love me, and I'll never ask for anything again. Consider the paradox. We crave intimacy, but fear vulnerability. We demand authenticity, but punish those who show shadows. We claim to seek forever, while living in a disposable culture that upgrades phones, jobs, and partners with the same restless hunger. This isn't accidental. Capitalism thrives on your insecurity. the $150 billion self-help industry, the dating apps monetizing loneliness, the wellness gurus selling love vibrations in bottled oils. Your heartbreak is profitable, and beneath it all, the silent killer, spiritual blindness. We've forgotten that love isn't something you find, it's something you become. A presence, not a transaction. A choice to see and be seen beyond projections and fairy tales. Yet we keep chasing the mirage, confusing attachment for devotion, fear for passion, trauma bonds for soulmates. The fallout is everywhere. Neurological erosion. The constant churn of breakup and repair cycles dysregulates your nervous system, leaving you addicted to chaos. Cultural decay. Relationships treated as consumables create generations terrified of depth, swapping commitment for situationships, soul loss. Each time you abandon yourself to keep someone, you etch the belief that love requires betrayal of your boundaries, your intuition, your truth. You've been taught to call this being realistic. But what if it's the opposite? What if settling for breadcrumbs while starving for banquets is the true delusion? The storm is coming. You feel it in the way your hands shake when you type another "we need to talk" text, in the way you scroll TikTok at 3 a.m., numbing the ache of another almost relationship, in the quiet terror of realizing you've built your life on a foundation of fairy tales and the ground is starting to crack. But here's what they don't tell you. The cracks are not destruction, they're revelation. The rebellion begins where the fairy tale ends. It starts with a truth so radical, it feels like heresy. Love does not require another person to complete you. It never did. The lie you've been sold, that love is something you earn, something you lose, something you find in another, is the prison. The rebellion is realizing love was always yours to become. Let's dismantle the myths. Myth 1. Love is sacrifice. No. Codependency is sacrifice. Love is sovereignty. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, but few dare to apply this to romance. To rebel is to stop conflating love with losing yourself. When Kierkegaard wrote, "The highest expression of love is to reject it for the sake of the beloved," he wasn't advocating martyrdom. He was demanding clarity. Do you love this person, or the fantasy they represent? Do you stay because you choose them, or because you fear being alone with yourself? Myth 2. Love should feel safe. Truth. Real love is dangerous. Not because it hurts, but because it demands you confront your deepest shadows. Jung called this the conjunctio, the alchemical union where two people trigger each other's growth through raw, uncomfortable truth. Most relationships fail not because they're wrong, but because we refuse to do the work they mirror back to us. Rebellion means thanking the partner who left you for showing you where you abandoned yourself. It means seeing every heartbreak not as a tragedy, but as a curriculum. Myth 3. Love is a feeling. This is the greatest lie. Love is a practice. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz by finding meaning in suffering. Similarly, love survives only when rooted in conscious choice. Neuroscience confirms this. The dopamine rush of infatuation fades within 12 to 18 months. What remains is oxytocin, the bonding hormone, but only if you actively cultivate trust, respect, and shared purpose. Rebellion is choosing to love like a Zen gardener, not a junkie chasing a high. How to rebel. Date yourself. First Sartre said, "Hell is other people." He was half right. Hell is needing other people to validate your existence. Spend 6 months without romance. Write love letters to your future self. Take your solitude to dinners, movies, trips. When you stop fearing aloneness, you stop attracting emotional vampires. Refuse to perform. Modern love is a theater. Curated dates, performative vulnerability, Instagram proof gestures. Rebel by being boring. Be awkward. Admit when you're wrong. Let silence hang. Gabor Mate writes, "Authenticity is the antidote to trauma. Stop auditioning partners and start observing them." Love as warfare. The Sufi poet Rumi didn't write about roses and moonlight. He called love a battlefield. To rebel is to wage war on your own ego. When conflict arises, ask, am I arguing to connect or to win? Love that survives is love that prioritizes understanding over being understood. Rewrite the script. Historians note that the concept of romantic love didn't exist until 12th century troubadours invented it. Before that, marriage was transactional. This isn't cynicism, it's freedom. If love is a story, write your own. Maybe your happily ever after is a solo pilgrimage. Maybe it's a polyamorous collective. Maybe it's platonic soulmates co-raising children. The rebellion rejects templates, the spiritual core. At its height, rebellion looks like the mystic who falls in love with the divine, not a deity, but the pulse of life itself. In sunsets, strangers' laughter, your own breath. When you anchor here, no person can complete you because you're already wedded to existence. This isn't detachment, it's fullness. You'll know the rebellion is working when their rejection no longer breaks you. It frees you. When you can thank past lovers for what they taught, not resent them for what they couldn't give. When you stop chasing forever and start nurturing now. The cycle ends when you realize you were never the victim, you were the architect. Here is the truth that will split your heart open like dawn breaking over a darkened sky. Love does not live in the space between two people. It lives in the space where two truths collide. You've been taught that love is a contract, a negotiation of needs, a balance of give and take. But real love is an alchemical fire. It does not care about fairness, safety, or reciprocity. It exists to burn away everything you think you know about yourself, others, and the nature of connection. The ancient mystics knew this. Rumi didn't write poems about romance, he wrote about annihilation. Love is a religion, he warned, and the only temple is the ruins of the self. This is why your heartbreaks felt like deaths, because they were. Every betrayal, every abandonment, every time someone rewrote your story was a funeral for the person you thought you had to be. And what rises from those ashes? You. Not the you who needs to be chosen, but the you who chooses to love fiercely without guarantees, to trust the pulse of your own soul over the fickle promises of others. Nietzsche called this amor fati, the love of fate. Not passive acceptance, but a roaring yes to every scar, every lesson, every ending that felt like the world's end, but was really a genesis in disguise. The ultimate paradox? The more you release love as something to possess, the more it becomes what you are. This is what the poets miss when they weep over lost lovers. The person who left you didn't take love with them. They took the illusion. What remains is the raw, undying force that fueled your longing all along. It was never about them. It was about the part of you they awakened, the part that knows love is not an emotion, but a state of being, a holy responsibility to show up, not just for others, but for life itself. Frankl survived the camps by finding meaning in suffering. You survive modern love by finding divinity in detachment, not indifference, but a sacred release, the understanding that no one belongs to you, not even yourself. You are a flicker of stardust borrowing a body, and love is the echo of the Big Bang still rippling through you. So let them rewrite the past. Let them call you too much. Let them claim they never loved you. None of it matters. Because love, real love, is not a story two people tell each other. It's the silence beneath the story, the recognition that you are both temporary, the courage to say, I will love you until I no longer do, and even then, I will love the truth that sets us free. This is the final rebellion. Stop seeking love. Become it. Let your hands plant gardens where others see concrete. Let your voice hum lullabies to the frightened child in every stranger's eyes. Let your heartbreak be a shrine, not a wound. When you finally see this, when you grasp that every goodbye, every ghosted text, every I never loved you was a merciless act of grace pushing you here, You will laugh. You will laugh at the absurdity of ever thinking love could be lost. You will laugh because the ultimate truth was inside you all along. You are not here to be loved. You are here to be love, and that cannot be taken. It cannot be earned. It can only be surrendered to, again and again and again.